I was broke, I was miserable, I was exhausted. Working long hours in the music industry. I had just moved to LA to chase my dreams, but after 2 years, I basically just chased a headache, and I ended up switching into tech, and honestly, I'm much better off. So today we will talk about my story, how I got into tech without any experience. I made a similar video about how I became a self-taught programmer. This video will be a bit more general though. It appeals a little bit more broadly to folks who don't strictly want to get into the coding side of tech, but maybe just want to switch into the tech industry. There's a bunch of roles in tech that don't necessarily require coding skills. So I won't go too heavy into the technical stuff. Who am I? My name is Dylan. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, I taught myself how to code. On my channel, we talk about my journey and everything that I've learned along the way. We also just talk about all things career development, personal development, tech coding, and beyond. All right, let's get into the story. So just to set the stage here, basically, I had moved to Los Angeles in 2018, right after I graduated from college. That summer, I got an internship at a record label, and I also got a job working at an ice cream shop, scooping ice cream. I did those two things for the whole summer, and by the end of the summer, I realized that I honestly needed something a little bit more stable. So I ended up getting a job at a talent agency in the mailroom. If you don't know what that is, I recommend watching Entourage. Great show. It'll tell you everything that you need to know, or just give it a quick Google. So I was working in the mailroom, trying to become an assistant to a music agent, and I ended up getting kind of lucky, and I landed a role on a music agent's desk as an assistant after like 3 weeks in the mailroom. I'm not going to get too much into my experience as a music assistant, but I did it for about 2 years. I learned a lot along the way, but to be honest, as I stated at the beginning of this video, I just really wasn't happy. I was making like peanuts, like minimum wage, so I was barely able to afford my rent in such an expensive city like Los Angeles. The work environment just wasn't really great. The benefits weren't amazing. And I think worst of all for me is that I always felt like I was compromising my own creativity by representing somebody else's. I felt like I wanted to just like create stuff on my own. All right, so fast forward to the beginning of 2020. Like I said, I'm pretty miserable in this job. The pandemic wave really begins to hit in February. We all end up going remote in March. So at this point, I'm working from home. I'm like, how do we end up here? This is amazing. I should have tried to get a remote job before the pandemic. But most importantly, this gave me time and space to think a little bit more about what I wanted to do because I knew that I was unhappy. Around this time, I started brainstorming like things that I was interested in outside of music because I've always been really into music. And honestly, I've always been pretty drawn to tech. I think it's super cool. There's a lot of really smart people in the industry, and I feel like it's very fast moving and very nuanced and modern. And that's sort of what I was looking for. So I was like, what the hell? And I decided to give it a go. My uncle actually works in the tech industry, so he decided that he would take me on as a mentee, which was really cool. So from the jump, I kind of had, a mentor. Just pausing really quick, having a mentor is game changing. If you can develop that sort of relationship with somebody where they can help you along the way, it's priceless. I can link a few websites below that are online resources where you can try to find some sort of mentor. But this is sort of a natural thing that happens though. It's not something where you just like sign up and you get a mentor. Like you kind of have to network. I can talk about that a little bit more in a different video. So anyways, it's the beginning of the summer of 2020. I start learning how to code while I'm still at my music industry job, working remotely. I started learning online with cheap and free resources, and I immediately was drawn to it. For context, I do like web development and front-end development, so more of the, creative side. It was just what I was looking for. The middle of the summer rolls around, I'm learning web development, and what do you know? 99% of my department ends up getting furloughed, so I get laid off, and officially I am unemployed. So I file for unemployment, and the government is paying for me to live. So this gave me a great opportunity to kind of double down and bet on myself and learn how to code and break into the tech industry. So I took the rest of the year to really teach myself like web technologies. But towards the end of the year, obviously I realized that the goal of this was to get paid to do it and provide a better life for myself, to be honest. So I knew that I had to go out and start getting some experience. I kind of just began applying to jobs, and honestly, it was radio silence, absolute crickets, which makes sense because I didn't really have the experience to back really any sort of wage or salary for me. I started researching ways to break into the industry, and I found that freelancing was the best way to do it. I didn't really have a ton of connections though. I didn't know who would need me as a web developer or a web consultant or a web designer. So I figured that the best place to start was honestly to just like reach out to friends and family. So I started making websites for my friends who were musicians, and for my family, family. My mom owns a small business, so does my dad, so I help them with things. So I think like one big thing to note is that if you're trying to start out, you don't have to shoot for the stars, if that makes sense. Like, use and leverage your current position to gain skills and experience. So for me, again, I had connections from the music industry, so I kind of tied in my new skills with my old past. So I did that for a couple months, and then I began to really dig more into my network. I hit up an old professor who ended up actually connecting me with some of his network. As you can see, it kind of just started to snowball from there, which was really nice because I began to make some money from, learning tech. I did this for roughly like 5 or 6 months, basically just freelancing / honestly getting better at learning how to code and living off of unemployment still a little bit. It was now the early spring of 2021. I had been doing this for close to a year. I'm freelancing, I'm gaining some really good skills and experience. However, my unemployment funding was beginning to run low. And the point wasn't for me to be on unemployment forever anyways, so it was kind of a good kick in the butt. Freelancing wasn't super consistent, it didn't feel super stable for me, and I really wanted to get some more formal experience, so I decided to start applying to jobs. I applied to all the fancy tech companies, Amazon, Google, all those. I applied to a bunch of startups and mid-sized companies. This is a crazy story. I heard back from nobody. Just kidding, it's not really that crazy at all, because again, I didn't really have the experience to back anything. And to be honest, I was pretty cocky. I thought that Amazon was gonna hit me back and want me to come and work for them with less than a year of formal experience. So to be honest, I got humbled. I got humbled really fast. I couldn't really understand why people didn't really want me. But again, like, I really wanted this, and I knew that it was going to take a lot more than just sending out a few applications to get it. So a big lesson that I learned was like, persistence triumphs over talent. And I talk about this a lot on other videos in my channel. If you really want something, you have to just keep doing it, and you're gonna get knocked down, but you have to keep doing it. So anyways, again, just to set the stage, at this point, it is the late spring of 2021, and I'm like frantically applying to jobs because my unemployment is running out and I needed to pay my rent or else I would be living on the streets. So I start mass blast applying my application to anybody that would take me. I kind of like lowered the bar for myself. Instead of applying to Amazon and Google, I started applying to some small local businesses around the area. I ended up hearing back from a local company in the LA area. They had me in to interview the next day, $20 an hour, no benefits, 2-hour commute total each day. You already know what I did. I took that job out of desperation and panic. It was a full-time job, so you already know that I was about to be hustling. But like I said, like, when you're first starting out, sometimes you don't really want to shoot for the stars. Like, it's a gradual growth. And this actually reminds me of one of my favorite concepts, the concept of compound growth. Typically, when we're first learning a skill and starting out at something, or maybe forming a new habit, you don't really see the progress at first. It's kind of at a lull, and then eventually it kind of shoots up like very quickly. And I see this with my story and so many other stories, that for the first year or 2 or 3 years, or it could be any amount of time, we don't really see progress, and then one day it eventually shoots up. But we'll get there with my story. It's the summer of 2021, and I am working at this job. I'm learning a lot about web development. By the way, this job is a web developer job. Sorry if I didn't clarify that. It was pretty interesting in a lot of ways. Despite the 2-hour commute, I was still going into the office, which gave me an opportunity to learn next to people who knew more than me. So I think that I really did learn a lot by going into the office. But by the fall of 2021, I realized that this opportunity just was not for me. You could probably think about why. I was just starting to get burnt out, and it just turned out to not be the right fit. So I ended up parting ways with them after some time. So it's now the fall of 2021. I'm knocked down and I'm pretty disappointed, trying to figure out what just happened. But exactly 3 days after all of this went down, I ended up actually getting a message from a recruiter on LinkedIn asking me to interview for a position at a law firm to do just like web stuff. It was a contract position that paid 1.5 times what I was making at the job previous, fully remote. So I was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. I started interviewing because, again, like, I was unemployed at this point. I wasn't living on unemployment at this time. So like, I had to get a job ASAP or else I was going to be living on the streets. So I ended up interviewing with this team. They were really, really cool, and I really wanted the job. And after a few interviews, I ended up getting it, and I was absolutely stoked. So I start this job, again, fully remote, amazing team. The pay was much better. And at this point in the story is where I kind of started to see my compound growth curve like take off. I could not believe that this was true, that this was happening, that I was finally like happy. It had been roughly 1.5 years since my journey had first started, and I finally started to see things come full circle. Again, one thing that I would underline here is the power of compound growth. Like, just because you're not seeing progress at first doesn't mean that you're not going to see progress down the line. Okay, another thing that I wanted to mention is Hasib Qureshi's article, How to Break into the Tech Industry, a guide to job hunting and tech interviews. This article was a game changer for me. But like, go ahead and read this article. It doesn't matter if you're trying to become a web developer, a software engineer, a project manager, an account manager, whatever it is that you're trying to do in tech, you will learn a lot and extract a lot of value out of reading this. He basically talks about how to network the best way in tech and how to get your first tech job. It helped me out a ton, and I highly recommend the methods that he uses, the approaches and the mindsets that he used to get his first job in the tech industry. So as you can kind of imagine in the story, things got easier as I began to garner more experience over time. I think that this is difficult to understand, that it takes time to get your first couple of good jobs in tech or really any industry, because there's a lot of people on YouTube hitting you with honestly BS clickbait telling you that you can become a Google software engineer in 3 months and make like $500,000 a year. Again, I talk about this a little bit in my recent videos. That might be true in some freak cases, but for the majority of us, like, you really got to put the work in, just from my experience and what I've seen in the industry and some of my other friends and coworkers. So my advice is, don't believe the BS that you see on social media and on YouTube. Like, you got to put the work in for anything in life and just be persistent. All right, so to kind of end out the story here, I'm at this company, smooth sailing, for like 6 months. And what do you know? I get a notification one day on LinkedIn from a recruiter saying that they want to potentially interview for a fully remote position at a really cool tech software startup. I look at the company, really awesome company. Everything about the job description seemed amazing, super interested. So I started interviewing. The interview process took like a month. There was like 5 rounds, there was a technical assessment, all that stuff. And it was definitely a pretty long and somewhat grueling process, but a great process that I really enjoyed. And I ended up getting the job. This job was definitely like way more up my alley, and I was way more interested in this sort of work. And also, like, the company was really interesting to me. Like, it was a real software startup, and I was absolutely stoked about this, because this is what I kind of like set out to do 2 years prior, to work at like a really cool software startup where you get all like the cool benefits and all the interesting people and cutting edge tech. So I ended up getting this job and I was so excited. So again, this whole process took me 2 years. Like, these things don't take 3 months. Again, in freak cases they might. Some people out of boot camps and whatnot, they're able to land these amazing jobs. I think that if you have the confidence, go ahead and try it. But I really do think that any which way you put it, you're gonna have to put the work in somehow. So anyways, that is my story. The big points that I would summarize here are: number one, I was super cocky at first, and then I ended up getting humbled. That's okay. It's part of the process. Don't shoot for the stars. Go for slow, natural growth and get experience over time. Experience is key here. Part of this compound growth process is just getting experience. It's really difficult to bypass that process. So don't be afraid to just start freelancing for friends and family. You know, maybe go and work at a small local company just to get experience and get your foot in the door. Persistence triumphs over talent every single time. If you want something, you have to keep persisting. You can't let yourself get knocked down by things that happen. It's just part of your story. The power of compound growth. I love Warren Buffett's story. I think it was something like 97% of Warren Buffett's wealth was accumulated over the age of 52. Think about that. That is amazing. This man worked half a lifetime to get to where he is right now. So you can take that and apply it to your own story and your own growth. And I would say lastly, do what's best for yourself until you get it, and then keep going. On the journey, there's going to be tough decisions that you need to make, but do what's best for yourself, because ultimately, like, it is a learning journey, and chances are you're gonna struggle on the journey just like how I did. So you wanna take care of yourself and do what's best for yourself. Hopefully this wasn't too long of a video, so thank you for making it to the end. I'm hoping that it motivates you and inspires you. Be sure to give this video a like so we can push it out to more people. If you really like this video, go ahead and watch another one. I make a lot of content about this sort of stuff. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Peace.